I think I first saw this film when it debuted at Fantastic Fest, which was a couple of years ago now.
Right.
Which means obviously that you made it a little while ago. But can you remember what it was about the character of Nolan and the script that kind of spoke to you and made you want to be a part of this project?
Yeah, I mean, so it got together. Marc Schölermann, the director. I was working up in Vancouver at the time, and he called me up. He'd found the script written by this fella Steve Fouquet, and he it was sort of in its beginnings, and he'd found it on like a website or something like that. It was so random. And then we just started. It was a great two-hander, was I think what got me off the bat. It was something that we could actually produce together and do together without, $10 million. And usually, you have all these great ideas, but it's really hard to actually get a film going, period. And like the amount of chatter that sort of goes on around making films is, always, it's just constant. And in my life, so many projects that you love and they're great and the scripts are great and the money comes in and something falls apart. So for this, it was something that we could control. And it was something that we could do. It was almost like a play because it was just like, it was basically two people. And then we worked on it. We worked on the script together and it just got better and better. And then it became something else, which was really the joy of it all. Especially when you like get to work with friends and stuff. It's the best because you have a shorthand. And so that was the draw. It was Mark. I love him. I trust him. He's a great director and a dear friend. And so we got together and we just started, writing and working with Steve on it. And I think the script got better and better. And then for, very little money, we could go to Germany and we shot in the German woods there on a location that he had. And we sort of made this incredible production and we shot it in 9 days. It was, it was so fast and furious and yet just like filled with good stuff. Like everyone brought their best stuff to it and it was so much fun. It was great.
When you say it was fun, but that's like 9 days of, I'm guessing, predominantly being attached to a tree. As an
Yeah,
actor,
that was
how,
not fun.
yeah,
No, I
how,
was it
how
was really
was that
intimidating.
experience?
Yeah, it was really intimidating. I was like I I had just had wrist surgery too, so I was like yeah, I wasn't sure I could handle it really. And I was tied to the tree the whole time. So, it was really 9 days of me just sort of sitting like this and like people would I was really tied, so like they'd have to like, a lot of the time they'd have to like get me up and and I was like, "Hey, can someone, bring me water?" Um but it was in the end it was sort of I don't know, it was like a meditation sort of like I just got really into it and it was there was usually on set or like there's so much frenetic sort of energy and chaos around getting going and where you're going to shoot and the location setting it up. Like we would just go to our spot in the woods there and I just like go sit on that tree and it was very like there was just one thing that I had to do, I sat there and that's where the whole thing took place. And it was a challenge and and then I take like I take like 2 hour baths afterwards because my body was like so broken. And that would heal me partially. And then in the morning I would get up at like 5 and I'd run to set, which was a couple miles away. And if I didn't make it, these very sweet women would pick me up and save me and then dump me in this beautiful, like pristine German lake that was so cold that it would like just like flush everything out of my body. It was like a cold plunge. And I'd go in there and then I'd literally get a towel and put on my wardrobe and go sit on the tree. So that was my routine and it was weirdly healing and sort of wonderful, you know?
And I guess the fact that, you were restrained, it must have really helped you, access, the mentality of the character. Because like you say, the between, shot setups and stuff, you're still sat there, like you say, you're having to ask people for water. So I'm guessing it wasn't too hard to put yourself in Nolan's mindset of, waking up attached to this thing.
Yeah, it did. It really helped. It really added to it. We worked with such a small crew, and they were just this German crew that Mark had worked with before, a lot of his buddies. Pardon me. And they were so professional and just like wonderful people. So that there was a very nurturing side of that. But outside of that, yeah, I was just like sitting on this tree and and it was grueling. And like that part of it was really, really hard. And it definitely helped me sort of get into the desperation of it all. And stay in it. You know, there was something very cozy about our little plot there in those woods, and we'd sort of go there, and it was waiting for us every day. And I don't know, something about sort of going there, sitting down, and getting into it, and then we'd really live in that world. It's part of what I loved about the actual acting of it was once you were in it, like we did a 25-page scene, which is unheard of in a movie. Like you don't even think of that, that's a play. Even in a play that's long, it's like so we shot a 25-page scene in I think in 2 days. Um, and it was wonderful because you got to just like live in it and be in it. And there are no cuts, so you're just going and like that it's sad for the poor cameraman who has to shoulder the steady cam. But everyone else, we got to really live in it, and there's something wonderful, I mean, about independent film and these kind of films that you sort of scratch the money together yourself, and everything that you sort of put into it, like all of the energy, all the sort of little meticulous things. Like we were shooting in Germany, so Mark would change the signs. He'd paste an American sign over the German street sign, or so he'd done all of this very meticulous sort of behind the scenes work, and all of that energy that everyone sort of brought to it really lent itself to this really unique focus that we all had for the project and the work. And it was like a meditation. There was a sort of quiet sort of way about going about everything, and we sort of eased into it, and then we'd just be off to the races all day and just, shoot our brains out. It was great.
I know you see you star in the film alongside AJ Buckley. I know that you guys have sort of like crossed paths, before on some projects, and there's so much of the story hinges on the dynamic between these two characters. Did it help, having, previously known him to be able to build the trust so that you could kind of access these more, emotional and stressful moments that you guys have to go through?
Yeah. Yeah, we did a movie. I can't really remember what it was called. About a bull pizzle, and it was another horror movie, and it was a long time ago, 20 years ago. But that's where we met, and he was out here in LA, and we immediately became, pals. And then, we sort of knew each other and hung out over the years, but I hadn't seen him in like maybe 4 or 5 years when I called him up to do this part. And he was working on SEAL Team at the time. And then he flew from Jordan, like the day he wrapped, he flew in and like started shooting the next day. So it was heroic. Um, and we just hit the ground running. And he's a wonderful actor, and also um, we there was no ego involved, so we just like went to work, and that was the best part about it. We worked on the lines. We worked on our sort of like, we rewrote little things to sort of make it really feel right. We had one day to sort of get out there in the woods together and rehearse, and he flipped a hatchet and cut his hand, so all the rehearsal was gone. He went to the hospital that day. And so we just sort of stood in the woods. There luckily wasn't a lot of blocking to do. Um, but yeah, I think anytime you get to work with friends, it's a privilege really, because you have a shorthand, and you also have a sort of safety with them and a comfort, and your own repartee and sort of rhythms with each other. And I think that all played into this. There's sort of like a sense of humor in this movie that I really like, because it's subtle, but it's there. But it's very much shared between like AJ and me, and Mark and Steve. It was just sort of our little, sassy repartee with each other, slightly crass but fun. And I think that definitely sort of finds its way into the words in the film.
I mean, you mentioned that you and AJ sort of, went for like a walk in the woods and stuff, which sort of, the question popped into my head. Did you get to pick the tree that you were going to be attached to? Or were you just presented with that tree? Did you get to go, no, I like this one?
I did. I think I selected this tree. Mark was really in charge of it because of shooting and what was around. Like excuse me, what the background was and sort of angles and all that stuff. That's really where it came down to it. But there was one tree that had some gnarly stumps under it, and I was like, not that one, because I knew my ass was grass if that was gonna happen. And we switched trees. I think the opening tree is a different tree because we had a really cool setup with all those bugs and stuff like that in the beginning that I loved. So there were two trees.
And over the last decade, there kind of seems to have been a rise in these sort of single location thrillers where, there's somebody trapped in some insane scenario. What do you think it is about these stories that fascinates audiences so much? Because, whenever these sorts of stories play at genre festivals, that's the one that, people want to see. People want to see the man tied to the tree. They want to see, there was one, a man trapped in a portaloo. These are the
Yeah.
stories that kind of, really reach out to audiences.
Yeah, that's a great question. I hadn't really thought of it. I mean, I think there's something about control, where you don't have control and sort of witnessing someone go through that total sort of um, inability to make decisions, do what you want. You're tied to the tree and you're sort of, at someone else's mercy. And I think that there's metaphorically through life, that's somewhere what we're all sort of working on our control, our power over these events and that sort of scenario of feeling sort of claustrophobic or unable to get out of your circumstances or sort of suffocating in a terrible job or a relationship. Or, I mean, there are all these sort of weird little, I think, metaphorical things from our lives that we don't necessarily, connect with that experience, but I think it's ingrained in it somewhere. And so I think watching someone sort of battle their own mental state to see if they can sort of hurdle past something that is sort of insurmountable, it feels like, and sort of crushing them, and how do they do it? Um, and then I think there's a simplicity to it. I mean, what I love about this film in particular is like there's so much action in films right now. Like, like I watch these films with my kids, and it's like there's no break. There's no like time to process. There's no time to sort of live in it or to think about it or even really be affected by it until almost it's all done. And then you're like, whoa, I just saw that. That was 2 hours. And you get out of the theater and you're like, what happened? It was a ride. It was sort of thrilling. And yet I'm not sure how much of it like stuck to my bones. And like, I love this film because I don't I think that there's a tempo to it that really allows you to enter this circumstance and this world and ask questions and think about stuff and sometimes just sit there in the sort of arms of beautiful nature with this extraordinary sort of scene playing out before you. And I think that there's something sort of like comforting about it, weirdly, like that, like this film to me plays both sides of that because it 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 touches on that, like that sort of peace and that sort of natural world, and yet there's this all of this sort of inner turmoil and chaos going on with this guy. Um, and I think there's something sort of wonderful about that in the pace of this film, and I think it sort of sits outside of a lot of thrillers that are just trying to always, they get scared that if they don't have a jump scare or something to thrill you. I get in these meetings with executive types, and they're all, great, very intelligent people and have done a ton of films, and but there's the fear that you're not going to thrill your audience at every second, and that sort of feeling that you got to keep them entertained, so throw more at them, make it scarier, make it harder, make it all that. And we didn't do any of that with this. I think we have the thrill in there and it builds to where it's going, and yet we're not trying to manipulate. We're trying to really just sort of live and tell the story, and we stayed true to that, and I was proud of that, the way it all sort of came out in the end.
And while I have you, we have to talk about Cherry Falls. It turned 25 last year. I mean, which is
Good
which is
old cherry
insane
pop.
because, we were both like
Yeah.
five back then. So, it's so strange.
Yeah.
Um,
No
and I think,
kids. We were
yeah, exactly.
children
I think
ourselves.
yeah. I think during the 90s, I think horror was looked at, it was kind of looked down upon. But I kind of feel that, over the last few years that, perceptions of genre films have really changed. I just wondered, what, you yourself as being somebody that, sort of almost started out in your career in genre and then, your more recent film is also in genre, just how perceptions and receptions to these sort of films have changed over the years.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're totally right. There was like a little stigma to being in horror films. And they were and a lot of them were sort of cheesy and not as, the acting was allowed to be really hammy and the sort of, even the architecture of the script and then the cinematography, like it all could be a little like meh, meh, but it was you were getting your thrills and that's I think it some of that sort of clung to it, but the horror of today is they talk about like elevated horror or whatever. Like to me, the elevation really is in like it's just better material, better scripts. They work on those scripts like about real people, and they want them to be more and more real and less just sort of you know just for the scares and the blood and the thrills. They want like a real movie out of it with all that other stuff, and I think that just the material and the filmmakers have gotten savvier and better over these years. And the product, I feel like I just wrote this horror film and it's so exciting what you can do in it because I've written other films that are sort of closer to me and I care about them so much. They're much more personal and and I wrote this one and it felt just so free and I could do anything. Like it was just like a blank canvas. And I guess there's something about this the genre that allows your imagination to just really be free. Like I felt very liberated writing that stuff because you could do anything. You could go to anything that came out of your imagination. You could sort of work it and twist it and make it a part of this universe. And I found that really exciting. And I think that's maybe a part of the genre that is really exciting for everyone else. Like it allows your imagination to sort of just go, and that's sort of the point of movies, I guess, overall. For me at least.
And I guess my final question, Bark it's taken, as with so many independent films, it's taken a little while to finally be at release stage. Why do you hope that audiences seek this film out and take a chance on it?
I think that it's a singular film that has a place all of its own, and I think it's worth taking the ride because I think it will really pay off, and I think it has the depth of good writing, and it was I think it really delivers what it sets out to do, and that doesn't often happen in the films that I've made in my life. So many things go awry in that process. Um, so I think that this film really hits its mark and delivers something unique by the end of it that then sticks with you and you really sort of think about it. Sort of delivers its shock value, but it also I think is a smart film too that you end up sort of rolling around in your head for a few days. Yeah, I hope everyone gets out to see it because it's something I'm really proud of and excited for to share.
Well, thank you for your time and your best of luck with the release.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's really nice to meet you.